Mark chapter 3, verses 20 to 22, and verses 31 to 35. He, Jesus, came home. Again the crowd gathered, making it impossible for them even to eat. When his relatives heard of this, they set out to seize him, for they said, "He is out of his mind." The scribes who had come from Jerusalem said, "He is possessed by Beelzebul, and by the prince of demons he drives out demons." Understand they're kind of functionally equivalent. You're possessed of a demon, you're mentally ill, the same thing in the first century world. One of the distinctions here to make is that there are authorities in his own hometown who want to kill Jesus, who want to destroy Jesus. The natural family of Jesus, remember, Jesus would belong to a household of 50 to 100 people. That's his relatives. Want to save him by dragging him away, and they have adopted now a new 24/7 job, which is, see, if you have somebody declared insane, if you have somebody declared mentally unstable, that could spare him being killed. But now you have a new 24/7 job in the Middle East. So they're trying to save his life, but you can very clearly see here, and according to Mark, they don't really care that much for the mission of Jesus, do they? It's bringing them great consternation and embarrassment. You see that? A scandal. And what the hell is Jesus, a construction worker, peasant artisan, doing healing and teaching and prophetic things? That's out of his honor class, right? Now, ask yourself, Catholic Christians, how does Mark see Mary? His mother and his brothers arrived, standing outside, Mary. They sent word to him and called him. A crowd seated around him told him, "Your mother and your brothers and your sisters are outside asking for you." All right, I want you to think about Mediterranean in-group and out-group borders. His mother and his brothers arrived, standing outside. What does that mean? They're not part of his inner circle. He's divorced himself from his natural family. They sent word to him and called him. A crowd seated around him told him, this is his in-group, "Your mother and your brothers and your sisters are outside asking for you." But he said to them in reply, "Who are my mother and my brothers?" And looking around at those seated in the circle, he said, "Here are my mother and my brothers. Whoever does the will of God is my brother and my sister and my mother." What's the implication be? If you're trying to drag Jesus away and prevent him from doing the work of his Father, you're definitely not doing the will of God, right? 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 So, how do you think in Mark, what estimation would Mary and the family of Jesus be given by Mark? Positive or negative? Yeah. Somewhat negative. So what do we make of this episode? Look at Mark chapter 3, verse 21. When his relatives heard of this, they set out to seize him, for they said, "He is out of his mind." Is Jesus having difficulties with his family, with Mary? It has been said that Mark chapter 3, verse 21 may reflect a genuine memory of difficulties the pre-Paschal Jesus had with his family when, as a single barbarian Israelite male in his 30s, he left his family to go seek theocracy, the kingdom of God, First with John the Dunker, and then with another faction, one that he formed, the Jesus movement. A Mediterranean cannot be without a group self. If you die to oneself, a group is always a group self you're dying to, not like us individualists. You die to one group self, you have to immediately join another group self. Because Mediterraneans, like MENA personalities like Jesus, Middle Eastern, North African MENA personalities, are collectivistic, dyadic personalities. There is no existence without a group existence. This is taking the in incarnation seriously. So if Jesus dies to his Nazarene self, he is born again in his John the Dunker self. But when John the Dunker is arrested, killed, what's to become of that group? And Jesus forms his own political faction, discerning the will of God in his life. And that's the Jesus movement and the beginning of the Jesus group, out of which comes our ecclesia, right? Okay. How does this pericope, Mark chapter 3, verses 20 to 35, present Jesus' family? Certainly, Mark chapter 3, verses 20 to 35, paints a very unflattering picture of Jesus' family, particularly since it is the first mention of his mother in the Gospels, because Mark was the first text composed. You all see that? So if we go to Mark looking for Mariology, theology of Mary, theological reflection of Mary, you're not going to have any luck. Mark chapter 3, 32 to 34. A crowd seated around him told him, quote, "Your mother and your brothers and your sisters are outside asking for you." But he said to them in reply, "Who are my mother and who are my brothers?" And looking around at those seated in the circle, he said, the in-group, "Here are my mother and my brothers." Who is outside and who is inside? When you're reading the Bible, you're reading a Mediterranean document, friends. And you have to go by Mediterranean rules of in-group and out-group. You have to always be asking who's inside and who's outside. And this story very clearly tells you. You don't have to play any guessing games. The scene has Jesus' natural family outside, while Jesus' true disciples are inside. Those inside are depicted as sitting around Jesus. Twice we're told this. A strong contrast is set up by Mark between Jesus' natural family, or his biological family, and the new family, the new fictive family, not fictional, but fictive family of co-workers in his political faction, the Jesus movement. That is to say, those willing to listen and do the will of God.